video today, so stick with me. We got a lot to get through. We've had a wild last week, so free agency's been open for a week now. Let's get started, jump into it. We're going to start with the biggest contracts first and work our way down to the smallest, and then at the end we'll kind of get into some quick hitting lightning round players. Don't necessarily need to talk about them too much, but I'll mention everyone that I deem necessary. Obviously, this might not be everybody that signed. We're not putting defensive players in here as we're an offensive platform. And then if there's anybody that you think that I missed, just go ahead and message me on Twitter at DynastyJerk, and I'll be sure to get a new write-up done next article. So let's jump right into it. First off, we're going to talk about Kenny Galladay. He was the largest contract we're going to be talking about. So he had a season to forget in 2020. Most of you, if you owned him, you definitely knew. But even if you didn't, you probably saw what had happened. He only played in 4 games. He averaged 16.5 fantasy points per game, so that was very good when he played. Unfortunately, he didn't have him on the field for 3/4 of the season. He looks to slide in as the Giants' #1 wide receiver. He signed with the Giants. 4-year, $72 million contract. Pretty big increase, obviously. You know, he's going from close to the minimum up to $18 million per year. So he got right what he was asking for. We'll see how he does. I have no doubt that he'll be the #1 receiver for the Giants coming up in 2021. Next up, we have Jonnu Smith. So Jonnu, he's leaving the Titans. He's going to the Patriots. They were in desperate need of a pass catcher, even if he has a tight end, and they actually got two tight end pass catchers. So I'll talk about that in just a minute here. Big salary increase. He's going 4 years, $50 million to the Patriots. At $12.5 million, he becomes a tight end with the 3rd highest salary. So I don't know if I love that too much. I was kind of low on him last year as well. I owned him in one of my dynasty owner leagues. And, you know, he didn't kill you. Obviously, his salary was great. But for 12.5, it's really hard to determine at this point if he's going to be a value for you. I personally really don't see it. It's going to be tough sledding. But you might not really have a choice. You might have to keep him, especially with how scarce tight end is. Coming up next, speaking of tight ends for New England, we have Hunter Henry. So he also signed with New England. 3 years, $37.5 million. So he's right at the same amount per year, $12.5 million. And he worked out a contract, you know, worth exactly the same amount. Good deal. I think it's a great deal for New England. Great deal for the Patriots overall. I worry for dynasty owners that own one, both, either of them. You know, you're not going to be able to rely on every target that a tight end would see to one player. It's going to be split between those two. I would put my money on Jonnu being more productive, but I can't see it being more than, at the very most, 70-30, but probably more like 60-40, 50-50, somewhere close to that. And even that, you know, even if you get 70% of the tight end targets for Jonnu, I don't know if that's enough to return value at $12.5 million. So we'll see. Obviously, if one of them gets hurt, we never wish for that. You know, you never hope for that to happen. But if one of them gets hurt, then I think you could find some big value in the other one. But it remains to be seen. We'll see how it plays out and what the split is. I expect close to a 50-50 split for both of them, at least as far as targets go. Up next, we have Corey Davis. He signed, what would he be? He'd be the second biggest wide receiver contract for 2020 so far. So as a lot of you know, if you've read some of my previous articles, you know that I'm low on Davis coming into 2021. I was low on him in 2020. I'm probably lower on him this year than I was last year. It's tough for me to imagine that he's going to be of value at $12.5 million. So his contract was also 3 years, $37.5 million, and he's going to be going to the Jets. And I like that landing spot. I really do. You know, we were talking on Slack with some of my beta users in one of my leagues, and it was Dave Brady. A lot of you know him. He's wannabes. And this is what he said on Slack, and it makes a lot of sense. He said, I guess 2 great games and 3 okay games in a contract year really pays off. And that was a direct quote from him. And I think we might disagree on okay and great games, what the definition is, because I think Davis had a little more than 2 great games and a little more than 3 okay games. But the point still stands that a lot of these big contracts can come off of 6-game stretches where you do really good. It often happens that a player gets hot in a single year or in, you know, just the second half of a year, especially the back half, and that earns them a bigger contract. I don't want to say a bigger contract than they deserve, but a bigger contract than they would have gotten had they not put in that up. So maybe it means more than they deserve. I don't know. I think Corey earned this contract. He did enough to deserve it. I just don't know if he's going to be a value for us when we're trying to find, cheaper wide receivers to plug in day to day. But we'll see. I mean, there's definitely a chance that he could emerge as the number one wide receiver. So he'll look to bring hope to the rebuilding Jets. Like I said, I like the fit for New York. I just don't know how it's going to work out for dynasty owners. So the deal, 3-year, $37.5 million. Up next, Curtis Samuel. This is one of the players I was most excited to see where he landed, what his contract was. And he was right on par with what I thought he was going to be, 3-year, $34.5 million. And he goes to the Washington football team. So he has the third highest contract of any wide receiver. Yes, we got Galladay, Davis, and Samuel now. And he's going to play for the football team. $11.5 million per year. I like the value. I like the landing spot. I don't know. I'm a little pessimistic, and I don't know why, because like I said, I like the money. I like the landing spot. Maybe it's just because we haven't seen it from him for a while, but it's probably also the fact that he's got McLaurin in front of him, and he's going to be the number one. I have no doubt that Curtis can't jump up to the number one. I think Terry for sure has that locked up. But it also could be the fact they don't have a quarterback yet. I know they signed Fitz, but I just don't know who's going to be the quarterback. So it's hard to decide on his outlook when we don't even know who the quarterback is. But I'm holding on to my own. I'm in my beta league, so he'll be sitting with me until I find out a little bit more about it. And I don't think I'll drop him. I think I'll be able to swallow that $11.5 million per year and see. But if you have to drop him, I don't blame you. I mean, I've been teeter-tottering back and forth if I was going to drop him, but I think he's a hold for now, unless you're really desperate and need to drop a lot of cap. But look to trade him. He's definitely got value if you need to look for a trade. Up next, we have Nelson Aguilar, another New England sign. They've been signing pass catchers like crazy this last week. So he had a fairly successful 2020 season with Vegas. It was enough to earn him a high contract. I would call this a large contract, 2 years, $22 million. So $11 million, that's right around second tier money for wide receivers. So it's good for him. I'm sure he's happy with it. He looks to become the Patriots' number one wide receiver. I don't think he's going to be the number one targeted player probably. I think one of those tight ends will probably get it, or at least the tight ends together will beat him out. But he looks to be the number one targeted wide receiver, coming into 2021. Up next, we have Allen Robinson. We all know that Allen Robinson signed his franchise tag. That's his second one. So he'll be sitting at a little bit less than $18 million in 2021. That is, unless he signs his new contract, which from everything we're hearing is that this is just a placeholder until he can get his new contract signed. So we'll see what happens before the season starts. But at this point, he's a little less than $18 million. Like I said, just a placeholder until they can agree on a long-term deal. I'd expect him to be a top 10 wide receiver coming in 2021. There's nothing that he's done that changed my mind. I mean, he's just pretty much as rock solid as you can get as far as consistent play goes from a receiver. If he can get a consistent quarterback, a quarterback for the entire season that doesn't change, then I think top 5 is definitely within the realm of possibility. So we'll see where he ends up at the end of the year. Up next, this one was a little bit surprising, was Kendrick Bourne. So it's not the biggest contract that we've seen, 3 years, $15 million, but it is one of the highest in terms of years. So he gets locked down for 3 years. And yet again, another New England signing. He's a reliable possession and red zone, end zone receiver. I mentioned that in one of my previous articles. And he's the 4th semi-high value pass catcher the Patriots have signed. So pretty crazy. They've actually signed more than $124 million. So $124 million contracted total. That's not just for this year. That's for the length of the contracts, but it's pretty eye-opening to see that they're really making a move. That was, I would say, their biggest weakness in 2020, and they've come up with a way to rectify that shortcoming with 4 average to above average pass catchers that they've re-signed. So good for them. We'll see how they turn out coming into the preseason games and see how that all works out. Up next, Marvin Jones. He signed with Jacksonville. So Jones signed a 2-year, $12.5 million contract. Pretty good value. He was wide receiver 52 last year, so not great. And a lot of that came on the back of 9 touchdowns. So he had a very high touchdown rate. Caught 9 touchdowns on only 76 receptions. So the 9 touchdowns, that's tied for 10th among all receivers. That's obviously very high. He'll look to immediately contend for the touchdown leaders on the team. I don't know if he'll contend for the entire league, but he should be right up there with the highest touchdown receptions, targets for the entire team. He also looks to bring a veteran presence to an overall pretty young wide receiving core. And, $6.25 million a year is not bad value at all, especially for a high, touchdown upside guy like him. So we'll see. Another one that I was really looking forward to him signing was Chris Carson. Carson signed for 2 years, 10.4, we'll call it 10.4 million. And that is amazing value as far as I'm concerned. I'm a little bit surprised he re-signed with the Seahawks. They didn't franchise him, which I thought they would do if they were going to keep him. But it turns out that they got him for cheaper than they would have if they'd have franchised him, because that would have cost them right around 11 million. So good for them. They found a way to do it. I guess not great for Carson because he's making less than I thought he would make. I think he's making less than I thought he would deserve, but that's what it is. Good for owners, good for dynasty owners. It's just a steal of a deal. 2 years, $10.4 million. I really like Carson. I really like that value coming in the next couple of years. I might even I know we've already talked about Seattle. We've already done our Seattle breakdown and speculation, but I might even work him into another article coming up here just to talk about how good of a contract that's going to end up being, especially if he can stay healthy. Man, it's going to be good. Up next, we have Kyle Rudolph. Not really much to talk about here. He signed 2 years, $12 million. So Rudolph's getting older. Obviously, every player's getting older. But so he signed with the Giants. He joins a crowded tight end committee. He's got Evan Ingram, Caden Smith. I don't want to say that Rudolph is the least athletic, but he might be. It's tough to say until we see how that whole committee is going to work out. But Evan Ingram had kind of a down year. Caden Smith, we didn't really see much from him. So it's going to be really tough to project which one of those three is going to break out. I would imagine it's going to be Ingram still getting the majority of the targets, but we'll see. $6 million price point, much more affordable than last season. Still going to be tough to keep him given, how few targets I'm projecting that he'll get. Up next, we have Kenyan Drake. So Drake was another one of my most anticipated free agent signings of the offseason. And this one was a little bit personal for me because I own Josh Jacobs in both of my dynasty owner leagues. So I was kind of panicking there for a few minutes. I eventually calmed myself down, but he signed with the Raiders. It's a great contract for him. Good value, 2 years, $11 million. So right at $5.5 million a year. Drake immediately becomes one of the most valuable handcuffs all fantasy football. Cheap salary. He's going to a good team, a projected good team over the next couple of years. And if Jacobs does, unfortunately, end up getting hurt, Drake would immediately become the number one guy, and he'd probably get more touches than either of them would get, with both of them being there. So I really like Drake. I think he should be acquired by every Jacobs owner, at least give an attempt to acquire him. He was actually dropped in my paid league, which I thought was a little bit excessive. So I ended up picking him up for pretty much nothing, and that was a great deal. And I own Jacobs, so I couldn't be happier with that. And then in my beta league, I don't have him, but probably be throwing out a few trade offers for him, especially with that cheap contract. So check the waiver wire first. I doubt he's out there like he was for me, but all right. Let's see. I just wanted to mention Suckup. I didn't have a ticker on the bottom for him, but Suckup, he signed a 3 or $12 million with the Bucks. It's right on par with what we thought he'd probably get. I mean, $4 million a year is right at the average pay for those, those kickers that are re-signing. So I expect him to be dropped in many leagues. Just a lot of people won't be able to afford him. I had him in both of my leagues, ended up having to drop him. So it's not a big deal. We'll be able to find cheaper kickers as they come available throughout the season. Up next, let's see. Let's talk about Ryan Fitzpatrick and Andy Dalton. So they both signed the same deal. I kind of lumped them all together. They signed 1 year, $10 million. Fitz went to Washington. I already mentioned that earlier, and Dalton went to Chicago. I think at this point, Dalton has a more favorable situation. The rumors are that he's kind of got the inside track to being the starter. Well, I think that Fitz probably will be the starter for the football team starting at the beginning of the season. I think it's a little less certain, so we'll have to wait and see. I've said this for years, and every time I said it, I had Dalton in mind. I don't know why, but he's always a quarterback that came to mind whenever I would say this to people. But it was an above-average quarterback is a good quarterback. So even really an average quarterback, I truly believe that an average quarterback means that you're a good quarterback because they just don't come around that often. And there's a lot of quarterback picks that bust. If you can get yourself an average or slightly above average quarterback, that is good in the NFL. And Dalton is that. Dalton is, I would call him a slightly above average quarterback. So he'll get one more chance to become an alpha again. And then, like I said, Fitz, I think he'll have to compete for the starting job a little bit more. Maybe not. I could be wrong, but I think his situation is a little more dubious. Also worth mentioning that Dalton's 5 years younger than Fitz. So if you're looking for the dynasty outlook, Dalton is probably going to be the player that you want, especially if he can secure himself a job, long term with Chicago. I really like that spot for him. Up next, Rob Gronkowski. So 1 year, $8 million, a little bit of a deal from his 2020 season. So owners will like that if you plan on keeping him. So we re-signed world champ Bucks. They did what they could to re-sign him. You owned him last year, $2 million break. You got to love that. He actually quietly finished the top 10 tight end, which kind of surprised me. I don't know if it surprised any of you. Solid keep candidate if you can find a way to keep him and not have to drop him after all these other player salaries increased. We have another player that kind of surprised me that he re-signed, and that player is Juju. I heard Jay Pounds talk, I think it was last week when they were doing those free agency videos all in a row, that he expected that there was no way Juju was going to resign, and I agreed. I thought he was going to get franchised or he was going to walk, but he took a lot less money than I think he was worth. 1 year, $8 million. And he wanted to stay, or maybe he wanted to bet on himself for one more year before he gets that big contract. I think that's kind of the theme, is a lot of players are waiting for that cap to increase in a couple of years, trying to take less years and then bet on themselves coming up in 2022 and 2023. So it might be a smart move. He's going to take less this year than I think he should have, but maybe that's all that was offered to him. We don't know. So he comes back to the Steel City, single year, $8 million. I expect him to have a better finish than wide receiver 32. That's what he finished in 2020. So I think he'll have a better 2021 than he did in 2020. And now we have a quartet of veteran pass catchers, and they're all making one. Go through them all together, and you can see down here at the bottom, we have Manuel Sanders, AJ Green, we have Gerald Everett, and Jared Cook. So let's talk about them individually. All signed 1 year, $6 million. Emmanuel Sanders, he goes to the Bills. I really like this signing. I think he's good both in Dynasty and real life. They're just adding weapons in Buffalo. I think this makes them a better team immediately. He's going to give them a solid replacement for John Brown. There's no way that Manny hasn't lost a step. He's definitely there's no doubt that he's slower than he was when he first came out, the first couple of years, or when he was in his prime, really. But he's a solid possession receiver, and he's going to be a great addition with Diggs and Beasley. All three of those guys, solid hands. It's going to be a good season in Buffalo. I can't wait to see what happens with all their numbers. Then we have AJ Green. We know that AJ Green's getting older. He's 32 years old, and he's going to try to revamp his career for a new team. He's playing for the Cardinals. Like I said, 1 year, $6 million. I had a weird stat. It's almost unexplainable, but AJ had 5 games with 0 catches. And those weren't games that he missed. He played in all 5 of those games. And he was targeted in all 5 of those games. He just was unable to get a catch in 5 of those games. So poor quarterback play, I'm sure, is the majority of the reason, especially after, Burrow got hurt. So we'll see what he can do. I can't say that I hate the contract, really. I mean, 1 year, $6 million, that's cheap, especially for a player of his talent level. I know he's getting older, but man, not as fast, still got great hands, still a dominant end zone receiver. So I really actually like that contract. If he's out there, I would check on the waiver, free agent auction, and see if you can pick him up. We have Gerald Everett. He signed 1 year, $6 million. He signed with the Seahawks. Don't have any info on this. Can't really make a projection on this so far. So we'll just move on to Jared Cook. Cook, I mentioned him when I did my Saints article. 1 year, $6 million, just like the other 3. He signed with. I don't like what he's going to do compared to what Henry would have done, but I'm interested to see what he's going to do with Herbert. So we'll see. He's soon to be 34. That's a long-term concern as well. Now we come to maybe my favorite. This might be my favorite free agent signing, and that's Mike Davis. I love this mostly because I have Mike Davis in both of my Dynasty owner leagues. So he goes to the Falcons, 2-year, $5.5 million contract. I love it. I guess he liked it. He took the contract, but I thought he would have made maybe a tad bit more than this. I was thinking maybe around $4-5 million per year. I think he earned that with what he showed in Carolina last year. But he signed it 2 years, $5.5 million, and this is great for dynasty owners. If he can become the lead back, for even a fourth of the games in 2021, this is a great value. He needs to be owned in every league. I have no doubt that Atlanta's going to go out and get probably one running back in the draft. They're probably going to get another one through free agency to add depth. I don't care. I like Davis. I think he might not be the most talented running back on the team when the season starts, but he's going to get work and he's going to be a value no matter what he gets. As long as he's not completely relegated to the bench, he's going to be a value. Now we talk about Marlon Mack, and this, as I mentioned in my article, is what I would consider an injustice. And I knew it was coming. I knew he was going to make less than he should have, especially because of the injury. But 1 year for $2 million that's not enough for a player of his talent. But that's what he got. Players are worth what somebody's willing to pay for him or what they're willing to sign for. So that's what he's worth in 2021. It's bad news for Mack. He's losing money. He's not getting as much money as I think he should have gotten, or probably think a lot of people should have gotten. It's bad for Mack owners because he's not going to have a clear path to a starter. He comes back to Indy. Jonathan Taylor, I think, is probably guaranteed to be the number one, at least to start the season. And it's bad news for Taylor owners because they have yet, another good above average running back coming back to compete for the job, or at least to compete for touches. So it's going to be tough to imagine a world where Mack is the day one starter. Stranger things have happened. I just don't see it. Now let's get into what I call the lightning round. So I'm just going to fly through some of these. These are other signings. This video is running a little long because we had so much info to talk about. So I'm just going to go through these real quick. Don't need a full write-up on all of them. Matt Prater, he signed 2 years, $7 million. Dan Arnold, not the biggest name, but he signed 2 years, $6 million with Carolina. Jamal Williams, he signed 2 years, $6 million with Detroit. He'll be the second string running back at best. I think it's no doubt that Swift is the overall best running back, and then Kerryon's probably better than Jamal as well. So we'll see how that all works out, but I don't expect too much from Jamal. Keelan Cole signed 1 year, $5.5 million with the Jets. Another wide receiver depth signing for the Jets. Davonte Booker, 2 year, $5.5 million. He signed with the Giants. This one's interesting. I like the spot for Booker. It's not that I really like Booker himself. He didn't really show much last year, even when Jacobs was gone, but he can find a nice little backup complimentary role to Saquon, especially if Saquon, God forbid, goes down again. That I think he could come and fill in 60% maybe. It's not a lot, but for the money that you're paying to keep him, that's pretty good value. Jacoby Brissett signed 1 year, $5 million with Miami. David Moore, good possession receiver, 2 year, $4.75 million with Carolina. Carlos Hyde, 2 year, $4.5 with Jacksonville. Tyrell Williams, 1 year, $4 million. He signed with Detroit. He's no longer the most overpaid player in football because he was for a couple of years there. John Brown, 1 year, $3.75 million. He signed with Vegas. They're just putting together a speed team. I can't wait to see them play next year. And then Mo Alley Cox and Tim Patrick, they both got second-round tenders, so they're right at $3.3 million. Phillip Lindsay, unfortunate landing spot, I think, for Lindsay. 1 year, $3.25 million with Houston. So his talent's going to be buried. I've always liked him as a player, but I think he's going to be buried on the depth chart. You got David Johnson, Mark Ingram to outplay it, and I just don't know how he's going to emerge, even as the number 2, let alone the 1. Rashard Perriman, 1 year, $3 million with Detroit. Mitch Trubisky, 1 year, 2.5 with Buffalo. I like that signing too. It's a depth signing, so he'll be their backup in 2021. Lamar Miller, 1 year, $1.2 million. He signed with the football team. So that wraps up most of them. Like I said, if I missed anybody, let me know. There is one other player I wanted to mention that signed. After all, this was supposed to be a Houston Texans article, and that player is Will Fuller. So Fuller, he leaves Houston. He's going to join Tua and the Dolphins. The deal he signed is 1 year, a little over $10.5 million. So a little bit over that. So in 2020, he actually had the best season of his career, if you can believe it or not. He missed 31% of the games that he played, but he still had his best statistical output. 53 receptions, almost 900 yards, and 8 touchdowns. So very, very effective. And we also know that he'll miss week 1 of the 2021 season. This stems from, the suspension he got for performance enhancing policy that he violated. So, starting in week 2, he's going to give them a much needed speed boost. The Dolphins just overall needed, I don't know if they needed more weapons, but it just seemed like they didn't throw the ball much at all. They ranked 20th in passing yards. So I don't know if it was just they were inefficient at passing. I know they were pretty low on passing attempts. So that's probably what it boils down to mostly. But hopefully Fuller will, when he comes back after week 1, he'll be able to give them a much needed downfield boost that they can take into 2021. And the last thing I want to mention, I want to talk about who's next. So who do we still have left to sign? I'm just going to list through a few of these names. We got Larry Fitz, Golden Tate, Sammy Watkins, Todd Gurley. I'm really looking forward to see where Gurley signs. Duke Johnson, James White. Actually, James White, I just got something kind of breaking news a few minutes ago that said that he's expected to re-sign with New England. So that's almost finalized, I believe they said. We'll wait to see the final word on that, but James White expected to re-sign. We got Matt Breida, and then we have a handful of older running backs: LaShawn McCoy, Adrian Peterson, Frank Gore, Le'Veon Bell. They all still have to sign. We have Trey Burton, D.D. Westbrook, and Alan Lazard. And then there's 4 players that I'm most excited to see where they sign. They are T.Y. Hilton, Leonard Fournette, Antonio Brown, and James Conner. So those are the top 4 that I'm looking at right now. And that's pretty much it. And this was a long video. I know this one ran a little bit long, but we had a lot to get through. Hopefully you find this information valuable. And I'll be back next week. We're going to start a new division. So I know we hardly even talked about the Texans this week, but that's kind of the way these articles are ending up going. As we start to get more free agent news, I'm going to start talking about that a little bit more and, start talking less about the speculation and what teams are doing. So hope you enjoyed it. Hope everybody takes care, and I hope everyone stays safe.